Good evening and welcome to All for Women's Football. I very nearly said the last channel I was on there and that would have got me into some trouble, but I'm not on that one, I'm on this one, and we are very much looking forward to episode 45. Would you believe it? We are doing incredibly well and we will be talking all about Tier 3, Tier 4 in a roundabout 12 seconds time. Yes, good evening. Welcome on this explosive evening, especially if you're outside. If you're getting lots of bangs, don't worry. We're not having some sort of gunfight at the OK Corral. It's all good. It's just a firework night. It's all fine. Worry not. Andrew, lovely to see you in the chat too. Right, gang, let's say hello. We've got two excellent people to join us. Poor old Stu's off on duty. So's Johnny stacking shelves somewhere or doing something like that as well, which leaves us three musketeers to carry on. Gareth, how are you doing, sir?
I'm fabulous, thank you. It's been a refreshing half term last week, and back to work this week, but feeling good. And football's going well as well, so nothing really to complain about.
Anything you can tell us about this little pet caterpillar that you keep in there just below your nose? What's gone on here?
Oh, as a staff team, we've decided to do Movember, so that is why that's why the fuzz is on top of my lip and nowhere else.
It's marvelous. I love it. It's great. No such thing for myself and Nick. We've decided to shave ours as normal. But Nick, how you doing, sir, from the Wolves Women Pod?
I'm well, thank you very much, Barry. All good here. As like guys enjoying the football at the minute. It's nice. Football is good. On the women's side of things, let's not talk about the men. They embarrass us and disgrace us fairly regularly at the minute.
Can't tell I think say that over the last few years.
What was the chant that we were singing? I'll sing the clean version. The men are poo, the women are class, I think was the song that was going around that the Wolves fans or Wolves women fans the last couple of games. So there you go. I think everyone can translate that into more of an appropriate football chant.
There you go. Well, there we are. So we've got 6 divisions as ever, 2 in Tier 3 and 4 in Tier 4 for us to have a little look through. It's very interesting, actually, because I was doing the thumbnail prior to this show, and I can only change one team because we have the team at the top of each of the divisions. Their emblem, their badge is put onto the thumbnail, and the only one that we were able to change was the one in the Northern Premier, which is the one that we're going to look at first. So it always does that. It's like 3D. Just imagine if you watch that in 3D glasses, you're going to be smacked in the face by a league. That'd be amazing. Right, here we are. So this is the league as it stands. And yes, Burnley managed to jump. I'm sorry, I'm saying all this, and that's really horrible to poor old Nick there, because it's Wolves that have been usurped at the top of the table by the mighty Burnley. But Wolves do have the game in hand. Now, just before we do kick off, I've just been doing a show on the sister channel, which has been really interesting. I mention this because I've just seen Liverpool Feds there in the Northern Prem. And it's a really interesting story there, because we were talking about a lady called Ali Newton, who used to play for Manchester United ladies. And she was playing in this match for Manchester United. She's come back to university around near Liverpool, and she couldn't get into her dorm. And she's in this Manchester United kit that's full of mud. And a lady called Janie Moore turns up and says, "What have you been doing?" It's like, a bit obvious. You would think, I play for Manchester United women. That's what I've been doing now, playing football. I do it every single week. And Janie Moore was a great fan, apparently a fan of Bradford. And she then, following that discussion, was so interested about the fact that they could actually be women's football teams that she went on to invent. That's not really the word I meant to mean, but to establish. Thank you. That's what I'm after. I needed Stu, really. He knows I like to pick the wrong word every now and again. I'm a very tired boy today. But she went on to establish Liverpool Feds. So, fun fact, Liverpool Feds was inspired by a Manchester side, which you maybe wouldn't have expected.
There's another connection there. Here you go, and a connection to me. That was at Liverpool Hope University. Liverpool Hope have a college, outpost at the sixth form college I went to in Holy Cross in Bury, Greater Manchester. So there you go. There's another useless piece of information that does sort of brings all sort of full circle. There we go.
It's a small world, isn't it? I wouldn't like to paint
is.
it, but it's very, very small. Right. Normally, we would sit here and we'd go straight to Gareth and he'd run us through the Northern Premier and then I'd go off and do the Southern Premier. But you know what? Today we're going to do it just a little bit different. We're just going to have a chat like we're around the pub. So let's take a little look at this wonderful league. Here it is. Gareth, you can go first just in case there's something you particularly wanted to say and that you planned all that time. But just in case you haven't and you've been doing this off the back of a fag packet, let's go for it. Burnley, top of the table. Wolverhampton Wanderers, second. But with that game in hand, not a huge amount of change in this league.
No. And I think what we're starting to see is this league more so than some of the others breaking out into those little mini leagues that we kind of expected to see. I think we're looking at Burnley and Wolves are going to be the two sides that push for the title, with rugby kind of being a potential kind of dark horse, but I think they'll probably end up finishing third potentially, or kind of slipping away from that title fight. We're also seeing what looks to be Calster, Halifax and Loughborough forming that sort of little relegation mini league. And then from Middlesbrough down to Derby County, you've kind of got the rest of the players that will be sort of scrapping from fourth down to sort of ninth. This is usually how it kind of shakes out around this sort of time. I sort of thought we might get a bit more till Christmas before Burnley and Wolves broke away. But yeah, I think things are going according to the script in a sense. Maybe I think the exception could be that I don't think many people would have said that Middlesbrough would be up there as the best of the rest, being a kind of newly promoted side. But as we saw last season with Cheadle pushing Middlesbrough all the way, promoted sides can really go for it, and we're seeing that in the Southern Premier Division as well. Promoted sides with a good backing, making a name for themselves and taking points perhaps where they wouldn't normally be expected to. But it's an interesting league, and I think, come not the end of this weekend because it's a cup weekend, but in a fortnight's time, it could look significantly different. We could have a new leader, we could have new sides in the relegation zone, and then that middle order could be completely different to how it is now. And I think that's a good thing. I was hoping that the title fight would be a bit more three-way than it is. I was hoping rugby would be in there because you've got that second place spot as well. I think if Burnley and Wolves kind of pull away from everyone else, there's kind of going to be that, is it for the title, and then the other one's going to go into the playoff. I think if you'd asked me at the start of the season who the top two would be, it is what I would have said. Nick's probably not too disappointed to see Wolves kind of pulling away from Burnley, but I think as a neutral, it's always good when there's more teams in there. When you're in the thick of it, as we'll get onto shortly, the fewer teams, the better. But yeah, I just think things are going according to the script. Burnley and Wolves, if you don't lose games, you're going to struggle to not win out in the end. Do you know when Burnley and Wolves play each other for the first time, Nick? Can't be too long. Got to be within the next month or so.
Second time. So the only draw that Wolves have got was against Burnley early part of the season. I think so. It was. I'll double check this now because I've got it up in front of me. It was the 24th of August. We played them first time. That was at Telford. We're due to play them on the 4th of January. My betting is that game will get moved because there'll be cup games. Their game against Feds was nearly postponed a couple of weeks back due to waterlogged pitch, and that was so. I don't see that game happening realistically on the 4th. I don't think either team will probably want it on the 4th. They'll probably want to be a couple of weeks later into the season before they play that. But yeah, we've played them once, drawn them once. Otherwise, we've won every game this season, unlike Burnley. Just say that out loud.
This has been a league that we haven't really seen for about 4 or 5 games, really, in terms of on the show, having a look at it. And it's quite interesting because obviously there's been so many cup games that have been played over the course of the last few weeks. So you've got a WNL Cup coming up again, then there's going to be a league game, and then there's the FA Cup, and then there's going to be a league game. So we've sort of hit a point where we're getting lots of games happening, but it's
Cup season.
Yeah, but it's very, very, what's the word? You're sort of flitting back
Disjointed.
and forth.
It's disjointed. It is. I mean, Maka calls it cup season, and we have 3 cup games on the bounce. It was League Cup, County Cup, FA Cup, and then we went in, played a league game, and then we're back. Played a couple of league games, and we're back into League Cup action. We'll have a get league game, and then we're back into FA Cup. It is very disjointed at this time of year. It's frustratingly disjointed in a way because you can't get a run of fixtures. You end up, I mean, we're 1 game behind Burnley at the minute, but you end up, if Burnley drop out of a cup or something, or Wolves drop out, people end up pulling away, and others sort of end up sort of 10. I think there was one point there were teams on 11 or 12 games, and others only on 8. Like this time, sort of by the end of the calendar year, 12 months ago, it was so sort of disjointed. I know Lee Birch was moaning about rugby don't have a game this weekend, but obviously they would have got a game if they hadn't lost in the cup. There you go. But they obviously they had midweek games which were played midweek instead of could have been played during the week at a weekend. And I think everyone knows when you go into it, you're going to get two midweek games, and there's always a chance that games at the back end of the calendar year will get moved into next year because they get waterlogged pitches. Rugby, of course, don't have that issue usually because they're on a 3G pitch. But therefore, if they have several home games around this time of year, they won't have that issue. But whereas if you've got grass pitches, you'll end up with games being postponed and moving into the calendar, getting rejigged into later on in the year. It's frustrating at times, but it's one of those things that everyone knows is coming. It's been like this for the last Wolves in 5 years in this. It is what it is.
Expected, but like you say, it's tricky when you, as at Withenshaw, for example, not in either cup or competition anymore. So had a game on Sunday, just gone against Doncaster. No game this week. Then we play Blackburn. Then there's no game. Then we play Huddersfield, Chorley, Stockport. So we're gonna play 3 games in November. One on the 2nd, the one on the 30th, and then there's literally just the 1 game in between that.
Are we surprised to see Hull sitting there in the middle? There was lots of chat happening last year about the support that they weren't really getting. Are we surprised to see them now? They're mid-table, but they are still definitely closer to the bottom 2 than they are to the top.
They've near enough got the points to tally. I think what did they get? 20 points, 21 points last season. They're halfway to that already. I think it's one of those where they had a really good start to the season, got the points in early, and they've struggled since then. I mean, they were at one point, they were 3rd. So they're slowly slipping back down. I think, for me, I expect they'll probably finish roughly. I think it depends how many people. It sounds really obvious, but how many people worse than them will be roughly would dictate where they'll finish. They'll get about 20 points this season again, and it'll just depend if there's how everyone else does around them. They'll be mid lower half to mid-table. They're a well-organised team. They do well at their own ground. They'll get they'll grind out victories. They'll grind out points. They'll cause the odd surprise. But they'll finish mid-table. I think the bigger surprise for me is Middlesbrough to an extent. They've obviously recently come into the club fold, so they were completely independent. They're now part and parcel of the main club, and I think that has increased their backing. And I think with even if it's indirectly with the amount of investment Newcastle are putting into around them, it's having a knock-on impact to those teams around them in that part of the world. And they're stepping up their investment, so it's having that knock-on benefit. West Brom is a surprise, personally. They were at the beginning of the season, I'd have put them as one of the favourites to be not necessarily in the bottom 2, but to be that sort of the next couple of teams above there. And Shiv, and I said this in my Sin 71 article, Shiv is doing really well there, and has had a really good September and deserved to be and deserve the praise that she should be getting at this point in time. And they were unlucky when they played Burnley to only lose 1-0. I think, but I'll wear my colours on my heart sleeve. I'm a Wolves fan. West Brom deserved a point against Burnley. I'll say that they were unlucky to lose that one. We'll see how they get on for the rest of the season. Obviously, I hope we repeat our league victories against them again this season. I'm sure we'll end up getting them again in the County Cup because Lord of Sod, we will get them in the County Cup. It's just one of those things. For me, I think the team to watch out for, having watched them on Sunday, is Halifax. I don't think that position reflects them. I saw them back end of last season where we absolutely battered them 6-1. This season we won, weekend we won 2-0. And whilst we probably should have put a couple more past them, they were a well-organised team. Rob Mitchell's got them playing some really good football there. And they will cause it. They've already caused one upset by by getting a point off Burnley. They will cause more upsets in this division. Rob's a great character, really nice guy. Actually, enjoy the banter with, and he enjoys having the banter with fans as well. And we'll give as well as take, or take as well as give. But he's got that team really well organised, and I fancy them. Go on, mate.
I think the thing with Rob as well is that's his full-time role now. So he's not. I think it's easy to overlook just how much of an impact that has, where you have kind of not unlimited amounts of time, but compared to managers that are also juggling a job as well, even if it's just a part-time job and part-time football or full-time, whatever. For Rob to be able to dedicate, all of his time to the club. I know it's not all to the women's first team because he oversees the pathway in the junior section as well. But for him to be able to kind of dedicate all day to Halifax, at some point is going to pay off. And it's going to be a longer road, isn't it, to get everything clicking into gear. But I think, they beat Stoke. They've taken the point off Burnley. I think they're going to win more games. I think it just, are they going to win more than Calcio or Derby or whoever it is else that's going to be there or thereabouts?
Yeah, agreed.
For sure.
I think the other team to keep an eye out, and they're struggling again, and it shows what happens when you invest or don't invest. That's Derby County. Sam Griffiths does really well with not a lot there, but you look. What the first season Wolves were in this division. Sam was, Derby were up there in the top 3, top 4. They're now bottom 4, and I think they only need a couple of injuries to key players, and that's that will be them struggling. What was it? Sort of beginning of last season, they lost Amy Sims to Forest. They lost Kiara Ray to Posh. And I think, beginning of this season, so that's had an impact on them again. So they're losing key talented players. They're big players. They're moving away from them because they can't offer them the support. It will tell at some point, whether it's this season or whether it's for the season. Obviously, if Rob gets Halifax scoring goals and winning games, and Calcer can sort of gel a bit better and start winning games themselves, then that will pull Derby right into the mire. And I think that will tell at some point.
For sure. We're going to take a quick look now at the Southern Premier. And of course, again, not a lot has changed there. Certainly at the top, we said very early. Oh, there we go again, the old 3D glasses. Self-sorting. I'll do it that way. Yeah, that's a little bit more. There we go. That might be easier. Right. Bournemouth, as we can see, sat happily at the top of the division there, which is great news for them, but not a huge amount of change, I say, throughout the rest of the division. Watford are right there with them. Neither of those teams losing a game yet, which is quite something for both the sides. But Plymouth Argyle sitting just below them, and Real Bedford as well. And you would probably argue that they are, as it stands, the only 4 teams that are probably in with a shout, and even Bedford there are sort of hanging on for dear life to the top three there. The one that immediately took my eye to them was Billericay. To be 9 games into a season, it's one thing not to have had any points and not to have won any games, but to be negative 60 already after 9 games is, I mean, that's nearly 7 goals a game. It's they were given the reprieve last year. I suppose really with this league, I want to ask the question: is it right, really, to give these teams that have finished bottom the reprieve? Because you're looking at Billericay, some of these teams that get the reprieve, they're not doing. Halifax are still in the bottom 2 in the Northern. They were given it as well. Is it just delaying the inevitable? Would it be kinder to let these teams drop and replace them with other teams coming up and give them the chance? I don't know. What do you reckon?
I think it depends on the team itself. I think Halifax, so once the reprieve was confirmed, have stepped up and sort of put that support in around. Rob's obviously gone full time, things like that, and have really stepped up. Whereas I think Billericay, without sort of being too harsh on them, and this is looking from the outside in, is a bit of a car crash there at the minute. It's they've lost their managers left, lost the manager, whatever, they've lost key players. It has been. It was always a downward spiral. They've been on a downward spiral for a couple of seasons as well. Whereas I think it should be a case by case basis. I think, but the flip is it's from the FA's perspective. It's how do you decide who goes up? You know, if you then got to try either have a playoff between the 2 second place teams in South East, South West, which would obviously put them all on a back burner, on a backward step compared to everybody else. Or you run with 11 teams, and it's how do you balance that out going forward? Or you run with 13 from both of the South East and South West second place teams. It's finding a solution that will suit everyone. And I'm not necessarily convinced that the teams that finished second would have done much better. I'm just having a quick. So Norwich City finished second in the South East, so which where obviously Billericay would naturally have gone to. They probably would have. They've stepped up their investments, so they probably would have been okay this season coming in into that division. But I hate to say it because she will kill me. Money's were the team that finished second last season. I'm not necessarily sure that they would be in that position, and Stu, I'm sure, will correct me at some point when he sees this and tell me how I'm wrong on this. But whether they would have been in that position at the end of last season, ready to step up into Tier 3, if that being the option, I'm not necessarily convinced. And that's money's probably, I would say, looking from the outside in. And again, outside in, money's probably needed another season at Tier 4 before they need to be ready to step up into Tier 3.
Can't really do that, can we? Can we do a case by case? I understand what it is that Nick's saying, but I don't know. I just feel like you've got more of a hope that the team that's already in the ascendancy and is doing higher and getting better and has got a bit of momentum behind them. Billericay were in an absolutely dire position at the end of last season, and they've not got any better. Is there really... when the morale's that low, are people looking at Billericay and going, that's a place I really want to go to? Or are people more likely to look at a place like Norwich and say, well, yeah, do you know what? Actually, we wouldn't mind going to Norwich. They've just come up. We'll give them a chance to stay and a chance to consolidate their position. Is there just an element of that? Because this just seems cruel. And I know that it's not, but it seems it because we're not seeing what they're trying to do. I know that they're already established. They're already there, but I mean, Billericay are going to get relegated this season. I cannot see a way in which this changes. I know it's only 10 points. There's still 12, 13 games of the season to go. I can't see it. Not with a negative. Look at all of the other goal differences. They all look all the way from 5th to 11th are all still in that relegation fight as it stands for that top spot. But Billericay, I mean, you could call it now. Like if this was a boxing match, the towel would have been thrown in and, the doctor would be in.
Yeah, I think it's tricky. I think if you're offering reprieves, you've got to offer them, and then it's not the clubs don't have to accept the reprieve. I don't think. I think the clubs could have chosen to say no. In which case it would have then been offered to whoever else finished 12th, I think, last year. But
Milton Keynes Dons,
which probably also could do with going down. I think there's that risk, isn't there, of if you go down, it then do you slide straight through? So we saw it with Fylde, who got relegated from the Northern Prem and then quickly relegated out of the Division 1 North. They look this season like a completely different side to one that finished last season. And so in that sense, potentially relegation was not necessarily a positive thing, but a chance for them to kind of stop it, reset, go again. Whereas, there was no guarantee that was what was going to happen for Billericay. So, do you take your opportunity at being able to advertise yourself and market yourself, to players as being this tier 3 club, because being a tier 3 club naturally makes recruitment easier, because this isn't meant in a derogatory way at all, but players have egos and they're going to back themselves to play at a certain level. And so if you're playing at even if you're playing sort of towards the bottom end of tier 3, you're going to be able to attract a certain caliber of player that you wouldn't be able to attract if you'd just been relegated into tier 4 with all of the mess that was happening at the same time. So I think they probably sat down and had discussions of what are the targets this summer? Can we get these players in? Because I know that registrations end on June the 30th. I don't think any of us are naive enough, or May the 30th, or whenever it is. But I don't think any of us are naive enough to think that managers aren't sounding players out from the moment the season finishes up until the point when those registrations end. Not that we do that at all. Obviously, everything that we do is all by the book, 7 days in, all the time. I think there's that sense of ego potentially of thinking, we can attract players, we can fix this, we can have a go. We only need to be better than 2 teams. We only need to be better than the 2 promoted sides. And yes, the 2 promoted sides are having a really good crack at this league, but I think all of that goes into it. And I think it's just, Billericay is stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's clear now that they should have gone down. They should have been relegated, shouldn't have been given a reprieve in terms of what they're doing. But there is also an opportunity for them at the end of this season to go, right, we know that this is done. We know we're just circling the plug hole. Let's try and bed in players. Let's try and get some players some real good experience, and then let's have a real good run at it next year to try and bounce back and try and recover. It's tricky. Whatever you do, it's tricky. I don't see them. Can I see them ending on 0 points? Yeah, possibly. You don't want anyone to sort of end on 0 points, because you think, how is that as a management team, as a group of players, or anything like that? But it's a tricky one.
Just quickly, so I was just looking at last season's league tables at the end. Halifax finished on 7 points in 11th, with Sporting Calcer on 21 points in 10th. In the Southern, Billericay finished on 17 points, with Plymouth Argyle on 20 points. So there was only a couple of points difference, and the goal difference as well wasn't much. Plymouth Argyle had a goal difference of -28, Billericay had -31. So in that sense, if I'm sitting there that season gone, we've got 2 new teams come up, we've got Milton Keynes out of the way, so there's a good chance we could finish 10th. Okay, Plymouth, we know, are sticking a whole lot of money into their women's team this summer, but others will be around us. I mean, and just to put that into context, Wimbledon finished last season 7th on 31 points with a goal difference of +4. They're already sort of, they've only got a third of those, not even got a third of those points with half the season nearly played. So you're seeing that churn. So if I'm Billericay, I'm saying, let's have the crack at it. I don't blame Billericay for sticking their hands up and going for it in that sense. It's just unfortunate now it's not worked. they want to have a better points and better goal difference than Milton Keynes had last season. Realistically, I'm not convinced they're going to achieve that either. Unfortunately for them, that's the crux of it. I mean, Milton Keynes finished 1 point minus 114. So that's that's a.
But I mean, their goal difference, I think, ended up being something like 101, 106.
114, minus 114 was their goal difference last season. So,
nearly halfway there.
Billericay have already played Wimbledon at home and lost 3-1. And even in the FA Cup, they lost to Portishead Town, who are bottom 2 in the southwest.
Only by one goal, so.
Yeah, but that says it, isn't it? That you're losing to Tier 4 team who are struggling.
Yeah.
So
really
yeah.
But what we will say in a slightly more positive manner on this is, obviously we've got the Tier 3 Manager of the Month that's come out. That's been put in front of my attention there by you two wonderful chaps, and I thought it would be nice to have a little mention about that, because looking at the Northern Prem, we've got Daniel McNamara. Let me try that one again.
Macca. Just call him Macca. Everyone else does Macca.
Macca to you. I don't know him. I'm a Macca to his mates, I reckon. But the Wolves manager there, Dan McNamara, and Lou Roberts from Burnley. So you've got those two, and they are, of course, the top 2 teams, as we saw in the previous graphic. But in this league, the 2 that have been nominated is Charlie Bill from Real Bedford and Marie Hurahan from Plymouth Argyle, which is, of course, 3rd and 4th. It's not the Bournemouth and Watford managers. So I'll throw it out there to you guys, and we're going to do our very best here, Nick, to try and be as unbiased as possible, and that will then happen in the next conversation as well when we get to Gaza. But where do you think you would potentially look at throwing this award? Because again, just to clarify very quickly there, Plymouth Argyle, it's been quite a good month for them. A 5-1 win against Gwalia, a draw against Exeter City, obviously a couple of cup games there they did quite well in, but we can't really count those. Another 0-0 draw with AFC Bournemouth, which was obviously a very good one for them, and a 2-0 win against Cheltenham Town. So those are some good ones for them. Whereas for Charlie Bill and Real Bedford, they had a 2-0 loss to #United, a 1-1 draw with Watford.
Just quickly, the hashtag game won't count because that's in November, not October.
Very good point. Well done.
And cup games do count. Cup games do count as well for this, which is interesting. So I've interrupted you just to correct you there, but I just point out as well with the Real Bedford lost. I did
think it wasn't a great idea for the very last result there to win a loss. So yeah, we'll go with that.
Real Bedford lost to Peterborough United in the FA Cup. I mean, don't get me wrong, Posh are doing really well. I'll chat about them when we get to Midlands. And I think that was a bit of a shock for me. Realistically, was that defeat? I think. We've looked at sort of Marie and Charlie there, and sort of Macca obviously has sort of done really well, got some really big results, beating Rugby in the Cup, beating Stoke. I remember who else would beat in this last four game period. It's always good fun to try and remember that what the month they're including. So what have we done? We've beaten Calcer, beaten Rugby, beaten Calcer again, beaten Stoke. And the Wivenshaw victory was in September, so that one doesn't count.
Wow.
But I think I had to get a little dig in there.
Was throwing that in. I will never know. That is filthy.
What I will pick up is I'm not being. This isn't me having digs at Lou, because I think Lou's picked up. She took on a role at the time when Matt Beard left Burnley in unusual circumstances, and obviously has had to hold that club together. And I think, she's doing a really good job there, holding them together and keep them going. You could have seen them going off the rails after everything that happened, and so in that sense, rivalries aside, I'm pleased that she's been able to sort of lead them and take them forward. On the pitch, so that's off the pitch. On the pitch, yeah, they had a good victory against Hull in the league. They had a good victory against Norton Stockton Ancients and Blackburn in the cup. Least said about the Blackburn game, let's be honest. But they drew against Halifax. They scraped a 1-0 victory against West Brom. West Brom should have got something out of that. I've said that already. I'll say it again. And with the last kick of the game, they beat Feds. And I think they're not convincing people in the league. And that's not me with a Wolves badge on. That's me looking at the results, looking at the performances. I think, guys, you would agree with me on this. Obviously, Maka should win Manager of the Month because he's winning all the games. He's winning tougher games, etc. He's not losing in cups. He's unbeaten since February when we played your mob, Barry, in all competitions. But if I wasn't to give it to Maka, I'd be giving it to Marie Hourihan, because Marie has taken that Plymouth team, which finished, as we just alluded to, finished 10th from 20 points last season, and it's probably aren't quite challenging for the title. This probably will finish just shy of the title, especially with the sort of top two there, who they are and how they're going. But she's turned that club around, and I think she's done a bloody good job there. She did well at Stoke last season in the end, where Stoke finished, and Stoke are struggling now. And Stoke have got a lot. Stoke rearranged their deck chairs at the end of last season, which, from what I hear, is part of the reason why Marie decided not to extend a contract there. She was offered a contract at Plymouth with a team that were actually wanting to invest and go for it, and she's taken it and gone for it. And I think she's done really well there, and I think she should finish second behind Maka. Let's put it like that. I'll say it like that. So if Maka doesn't win it, then I'd want Marie to win it, because I think she's done a bloody good job.
Right, there we go then, Gaz. Danny Mac is the one for Nick, but who is it for you?
Well, I voted on this, and my vote was for Maka as well. I thought,
let's remember to vote for Wimenshaw next time, then I vote.
Maybe Nick and I can come to some sort of arrangement without wanting to spoil the Division 1 Manager of the Month nominees. But no, I think Nick's right. If you win all your games that month, especially when I shouldn't automatically make you Manager of the Month, because if you 4 games of the season with the bottom 4 teams and you're the top team, and someone has a tougher fixture list, then that should contribute as well. But it's not been an easy run of games, and they've come through it having won them all. So for me, it's Maka at Wolves.
Fair enough. There we go then. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of Tier 3. So we will say goodbye to that graphic just there. And would you believe it? We haven't got John Foster on, but it's taken us 36 minutes to get through 2 divisions. So we are going to have to think a little bit about what we're doing here. Otherwise, we are actually going to be going on till about 11 o'clock, which in the grand scheme of things I don't mind, but there is a chance I'm just going to fall asleep like an iPad does. It's just gone. We're running on empty. It's been a busy day for all 3 of us. But let's move on to the next division. We are, of course, sticking with the North because there's still an order, and we stick with that. We like order here. Let's see if we can do a less. Oh, look, we're wobbly this time. Ooh, interesting. Right. They're my team. Cheadletown Stingers sitting there at the top of the division, but they've been stung a little bit because they have got a side breathing right down their neck. It was last year, Gareth, we said this. It was one of the most entertaining and exciting leagues. It still is. With 2 teams on the same amount of points. The 3rd team a point behind. The 4th team a point behind them. I mean, it's pick 1 from 6 at this point, which is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating. Stressful also to be in the middle of it. I think this is kind of what we kind of want to see from these leagues, isn't it? And I think this is the kind of title race you get where having that playoff spot as well makes it, even more interesting because, one thing I will say is if you look at the winners of this league for the last 3 years, Middlesbrough won it last year. The year before that was Hull City. The year before that was Newcastle United. And so for the last 3 years, we've had big, notable, recognised teams win it. The year before that was Liverpool Feds. So I think it's actually, and even though, yes, there is an element of bias to this, I think it's really nice that what we're seeing here is two football teams that are kind of community-based football clubs that play in the Northwest Counties Regional League, who the women's teams are higher up in the pyramid than the men's team, and they're there setting the pace and breathing down their necks are these well-established Premier League EFL clubs with Huddersfield, Leeds, Stockport. They're the recognisable names in this division, and they're not the ones that are kind of pulling away at the front and running away with it. I think how Cheadle respond in the next couple of weeks is going to be really important. I think their run of games is not. I think after you've had a couple of disappointing results, you don't really want to have the run of games that Cheadle have got. This coming Sunday, they play Huddersfield in the Cup, which, in the grand scheme of things, they'll probably, I think it's the Plate actually, but they'll probably take or leave the Plate. Then they play Stockport County away on the 16th, and then there's kind of the break for the FA Cup. But the next couple of games, Huddersfield and Stockport, when you've got 1 point from the last two, although one of them is a cup game, are tricky games, especially when the side that are breathing down your neck are playing the side that are yet to pick up a point all season, and have shipped 10 goals against them twice against Burnley. So when Cheadle play Stockport, Wythenshawe play Blackburn, and Huddersfield play Leeds. So, of those top five, 4 of them are playing each other. I think Huddersfield play Leeds. I think either way, them two play each other relatively soon. That might be the FA Cup actually that I'm confusing myself with. But yeah, there are some tricky ties coming up. Sorry, Huddersfield play Chorley and then they play Leeds in the FA Cup. But yeah, there's still potential for change. Like you say, you wouldn't want to stick your colours to any mast of the top 6 at the moment. You imagine that the league is now split into sort of 2 sort of real mini leagues. You've got the top half of the table that are pushing for the title and that playoff spot as well. And you've got the bottom half of the league that are fighting for the relegations spots. You imagine things are looking tricky for Blackburn, but they are only 4 points off. Blackburn are a side that I think are getting better week on week. They were 2-2 against Chorley for a good chunk of the game they played midweek, until Chorley sort of found another gear and ended up winning 6-2. They only lost I think they played Norton Stockton at the weekend. They only lost 2-1 there. So they're having closer games. When they played Leeds, they lost 7-0. So they were kind of getting blown out of the water a bit at the start of the season. They have managed to sort of find something there a little bit. I imagine when they start to play some of those other teams around them for the sort of second time through, things will be a bit closer. I don't see them finishing the season. I said Billericay, I could see them finishing on 0 points. I don't see Blackburn finishing on 0 points. Do I see them finishing high enough up the table to avoid relegation? Probably not. But I don't think they're a complete write-off. I think they're circling the plug, but I don't think they're fully sort of committed yet. But even so, the rest of that relegation fight is super interesting. You've got Durham down there. Donny Bell's given the reprieve last season. This is kind of an example of where having that reprieve could potentially be a benefit. They are not in the relegation zone, granted only 2 points, and York will have a game in hand, or do have games in hand. Chester Street, the other promoted side, they are also kind of within that space as well. York have actually played 7 games, not 5, so they only have the 1 game in hand, not 3. But they can pull themselves out if they win that. Durham can pull themselves further away if they win their game in hand as well. But yeah, like I said last season, this was a league that went down to the wire. It did. I'm hoping it doesn't come down to goal difference again this year, because we're not in the best of positions with goal difference at the moment. The kind of 5-0 defeat to Stockport earlier in the season, first game of the season.
I was going to ask you about this
has
actually,
had an
Gareth,
impact.
because you mentioned that 5-0 defeat. It seems a bit bizarre to see you just on 3. So that tells me that obviously the other games you played, if you had a 5-0 defeat there, the other ones have obviously only been won by 1 or 2 goals. Your big wins and your big losses have come in cup matches, as Nick would attest to. So it seems to me, that's what he's saying, what he said. Are the games as tight as they seem there?
Yeah, we beat Shield 2-1 midweek in what was an angling game of football to watch. It, the weather was an absolute downpour. We managed to get the game played without stopping for 35 minutes though. So, if we had the same weather that Burnley had, we were able to play all the way through. Leeds was a 2-2 draw. Norton Stockton, I think, was 2-1. Chester Street 3-1. Doncaster 2-1. Durham, I can't remember off the top of my head. York 3-2 or 4-2. But yeah, so the wins haven't been huge wins. Yeah, 2-1, 2-1, 4-2, 2-1, 2-2, 3-1, 2-1, and then the 5-0 defeat. So but kind of the flip side to that is, if we win every game for the rest of the season by 1 goal, we'll win the title. So it's just that case of we would like to put more goals past teams. We would like to not kind of have a moment where we just switch off for a moment and end up conceding and make life difficult for ourselves. And I think it's that case of, when we had opportunities to score 3, 4, 5 goals at the weekend, but just didn't take them. A couple of 1v1s, a couple of people opening the box, and forcing keepers making good saves, keep and things like that. But I think a 1-0 win is better than nothing. 3 points is 3 points, and yeah, last season did come down to goal difference, but hopefully this year it won't.
Yeah, I think it's going to be absolute humding over the league again. The North, watching the North Div 1 North from afar was brilliant, because you had a real good relegation battle. You had a real good sort of top half battle for a large part of the season. It wasn't all done and dusted bar the shouting, until the last couple of weeks. I know you're going to want it done and dusted, fairly quiet and nice, easy life, Gaz. But the rest of us are enjoying this sort of being really tight and going right down to the wire. Roll on the goal difference is what I say. Roll on the goal difference. Just quickly, just on Blackburn, I was having a look at some of their results, as you say. And picking out the fact they've just played Chorley recently. When they played them back in September, they lost 8-0. And yes, they lost 6-2 this time, but they've scored 2 and they've conceded 2 less. That's huge progress, I think, for a team that are in a position like Blackburn are. And I think, if I look at sort of some of their results against the teams that are the bottom half, they only lost 1-0 to Donny. They only lost 1-0 to Durham. Have they played York? Yeah, no, they've got York coming up in a couple of weeks after they played you. They've got York at the end of November. So therefore, that will be a good tester for them. If they can get something in that game, then that will be really set them, on course for at least challenging for survival, if not survival. I think it will give them a real momentum boost. I think, it's one of those where I think they just need to get those cup games against Burnley out of the way, because that was never going to do them any good. I think that sounds harsh, but I would have almost gone, we're not certainly after they played the first one, I wouldn't have blamed them if they forfeited the second one and be done with it. But there we go. There we go. There, that's my opinion.
Very
Midlands.
good.
Back
Well,
to
here we are. We have got the Division One Midlands side league up there now, and again, and not a lot of change. Not a lot of change going on. Certainly at the top, it's still Peterborough that are flying high with a complete 100% record. 1-7, not a single point dropped at all as yet. But looking at the rest of it, Barnsley women doing very well to hang on to the coattails of Peterborough United there, where they have played a game more. And then, of course, you've got Leafield Athletic and Bournemouth St Michael's. That's two of John's bingo card ticked off right there. But they're doing incredibly well up there in the top four. Lincoln United, not having the best of times, as we know, down at the bottom there. We've got Stourbridge, of course, who are, there we go, that's another one off of the bingo card. That's 3 down, and we're only in the one division. It's amazing, and we're going to get another one in just a second. But yes, there's Stourbridge just below the dotted line. And of course, as you go up there, as high as Kidderminster, Worcester, there it is. And Sheffield, you have got a lot of sides that could still be dragged into that. So this is the Midlands one, Nick. It's looking quite interesting. I think for me, it's quite nice to see Boldmere up there near the top. You know, they're one of those that, you know, sort of been there or thereabouts, but again, it's one of those teams, and Gareth always says it as well, but it's not a well-known side. So actually, it's quite nice to see some of these more independent teams just sort of really slinging it out against. And in the absence of those cup sets that you would like to see in the FA Cup, it's quite nice to see them doing it here in the WNL.
I agree with the principle of what you're saying, Barry. I would use Leafield as the example rather than Boldmere in this case. I think the work that Tash at Leafield is doing is absolutely amazing. I think she is really her and her Leafield team are really smashing it out above where they were sort of 2 seasons ago. You think that they scraped through into staying in the division 18 months ago, and then now sort of this is their second season pushing in the top 3, top 4, and are doing really well on a much smaller budget than many of those teams around them. Barnsley, of course, are technically an independent team as well. We mustn't forget that it's this Barnsley, not the other Barnsley, that were associated with the men. It's not this team that was associated with the men's team. So this is the independent Barnsley, so doing well as well. I can't remember if I mentioned it in this pod or not, but I live Cambridgeshire way, so Peterborough is my local team in this league, and I've been very critical of Peterborough in the past on other pods, but it's about and I'd say it now, it's about time they actually won this league. They've been pushing it for so long and bottled it so many times last couple of seasons. I think they're doing a really good job now this season. I think it's something seems to have clicked for that team mentally. I think it's always been a psychological thing somewhere along the line. They've bottled it because they've always had the talent to win the league, but they just never quite made it. But I think this season they are going to do it, and the win against Boldmere, who were the only other team at the time to have gone undefeated or not, going with a 100% record into that game between Peterborough and Boldmere on Sunday. That was key. And I think there's some they've really pushed it, and really Peterborough demonstrating it how good they are. I think Stourbridge, from what I understand, I haven't seen them play this season, but talking to people who have, are really improving. And I think, and that's not John Foster talking, that's me talking to other people, not just John's biased view. They're pushing it, and I think will come good. I hope they come good enough to stay up this season, because I think it will do them the world of good as well. I think it's the position Northampton Town is the one that interests me. They lost a lot of players over the close season, including the likes of Jade Bell, who went to Cambridge, and they sort of lost half their management duo as well early on this season. The other half of the management duo has been relieved of his role over the last couple of weeks as well. They are considering sort of last year they were one of the people chasing chasing Loughborough in that pack. To be 10th and to be really struggling, it's a huge change. But I think it says a lot about where football is in this division is it doesn't take much to check. A couple of players leaving, manager change, and that's it. The team structure will fall away. And I mean, Northampton were putting in a lot of support for that team as well as a club. So I think it does show that they're something's not quite right behind the scenes there. And I think that's a bit of a interesting one. Just quickly, just to wrap up, from my perspective, independent clubs, Worcester City smashing it. 3 Wolves players on loan at Worcester, doing really well there, all 3 of them. So really pleased for them as well. And they're another independent club doing it their own way. So good to see them mid-table. And obviously to complete the John Foster bingo card, Andy Fisher's doing another really good job at Kiddie Harriers. I think Andy's probably taken on board some of the lessons he learned from Stourbridge of progression too quickly. I think take it more small steps. I think is as well. I think don't get me wrong. Every manager wants to win win games, win leagues, but actually racing up the league tables like the Stourbridge did and wasn't necessarily the best thing for them in the long run. I think so. I think there's a bit of tail there for others. But there you go. That's my 2 pennies worth, anyhow.
And to be clear, I didn't use Leafield as the example because I hear about them so much from John that they feel like quite a big side to me now. You talk about your teams like Peterborough that you think are well known. So Leafield for that exact reason. With Bolmere, St Michael's, I couldn't point to it on a map. So there we go.
Sutton Coldfield, Royal Borough, Sutton Coldfield. The connection is, of course, that their manager is one Mr. Carl Henry, ex-Wolverhampton Wanderers captain and Wolves Foundation ambassador. So there you go. So yes.
The interesting thing with Carl Henry as well is he has said that this season, I can't pretend to have paid that much attention, but he said this season that he's going to have, was it 1 or 2 slots on the bench for under 18s players in every matchday squad, which I think on the face of it, it's fantastic. Digging a bit deeper, how many of those games are those players getting minutes, and how valuable are those minutes for them rather than playing in an under 18s league, I don't know. But kind of pushing and promoting that pathway through to the first team, I think is a positive thing, though.
Didn't know that, and that is absolutely, like you say, very, very positive, very interesting step, I suppose, for him to take. Now, we've got 2 more divisions to look at. Ordinarily, that would be my division and Stu's division, but we've started in this manner, and I think we'll continue in this manner because it seems to be working quite well this evening. But here we are with the Southeast Division 1, and it's still Fulham at the top of the pops on this one, doing, again, I think incredibly well. Norwich just behind them, just the 1 point, and really it's quite a surprise to see where they are at the moment in that respect. London Bees are 5 behind Norwich City, so that's not looking too great for them. It really looks like it's going to be between Fulham and Norwich. The loss that Norwich have got was to Fulham, and that is why they are doing as well as they are doing. But Norwich, fantastic side. Obviously, Stevenage played them in the FA Cup a couple of weeks ago, and what a game that was, as I mentioned before. A really good side there, Norwich. It'll be very interesting to see if they can keep up with the might of Fulham, who are currently just trying to blaze a trail through these divisions, having come up from the London and South East Division, Premier Division last season. Interesting to see down the bottom. These 2 keep changing, Sudbury and Chesham. They're not getting any points. It's just constantly between the goal difference. The last time we had this, Sudbury were bottom and Chesham were just above them. But I remember changing it before, and it was because Chesham were in 12th and Sudbury were in 11th, and it was just because of the goal difference, and that's currently where they're standing. So they're not getting any points, but they do sometimes do-si-do based on that. Nice, actually, to see MK Dons just above the line there, because I think it is quite sad if you see teams going into a free fall. We saw it with Kingsley and Town. They were in the Eastern Region Premier. They didn't do too well, and then went immediately out of the Division 1 as well, and ended up in a in the county leagues. You don't really want to see that. It's horrible to see teams just free fall all the way through the divisions. So it would be nice if Milton Keynes Dons could pull the handbrake there and try and arrest that decline before it becomes anything major. Luton, they're doing all right. They look like, with Sudbury and Chesham doing as they are, it does look like Luton will probably maintain their position in the Division 1 South East, which will be nice because, again, you want to see teams, we talk about it in the WSL time and time again, championship sides come up, immediately go back down. It's no fun. So you do want to see these teams that are coming up giving it a go and have a good battle, and Luton are certainly managing to do that, not drawing any games, but winning enough to have a sort of mid-table position there. Chatham Town as well doing incredibly well. We saw they had a good result in the FA Cup. They're not looking like they're going to trouble the top of the table this time round, but again, another side who have done incredibly well as well. So it'd be very interesting to see how these teams get on. So I'll throw it out to you guys. Is there anything that you can see on here that you particularly like to shout out and talk about?
Could I just start off with wishing Brooke Shield Ferris of Cambridge United a speedy recovery. Really nasty triple fracture and dislocation of a leg in the game against Chatham on Sunday. That, I mean, just sounds horrific. So speedy recovery to her, and hope all is well with the players as well. He had to obviously sort of support her as well and look at that, sort of see that happen. Obviously, that is really disturbing for sort of side event to occur. Obviously, caused the game to be abandoned. Why they're looking at that? I mean, I think that race to the top two, that top two battle between Norwich and Fulham is going to be really entertaining. I'm looking forward to it. I want to get Norwich in the cup at some point, because I went down to the Nest for over half term to see my daughter play for Posh against Norwich, and it was a really nice facility down there, so well worth the visit if you ever get the chance. I'll say that really lovely little setup they've got there. I think it's going to be a challenging game, challenging season for both those two teams. I could see, if I was putting betting money on it, I think Fulham will probably just eke the title and Norwich will go up in the playoffs. That's my put where my mouth is and all that on there. I think, but I do think this division is very much sort of it's two-horse race. I don't think London Bees are going to sort of really challenge anymore. But again, it's another team, London Bees, who have changed from where they were last season, are pushing for it. Change things around, brought in new manager, etc., and really done well. I think that Luton again sort of stabilise. Will stabilise and go do well again in that mid-table, and will be a good setup for them there. I think Chesham, unfortunately, and Sudbury probably are going to struggle. I've noticed with interest that Sudbury, as a football club, made an announcement today over their financial position as a football club that they were going to be issuing there, and they were clear it was poor spending by the men's side of the club. They were historic. I can't remember the phraseology they used in their statement, but it was something along the lines of historic poor financial management by the men's side of the club has caused them huge issues. I think that could well be coming back to bite them across the whole club at some point. We'll obviously something to keep an eye on there. And Chesham, again, they're another one who have done that sort of dancing around the top of the relegation battle for the last couple of seasons. And I think it's just time's finally caught with them there. They're one of the two, they're one of the two worst teams in the league, and it's their time to go back down again. I think they've had a good session in there, or a good few seasons. So I think it's just, their turn this time round. I've always surprised that Dulwich aren't doing better, to be honest. I thought a couple of seasons ago, when they came up, I thought they'd really smash this division, and they've never sort of stepped up. They've got they did have a really good fan base, really good support, and I thought that would help them sort of galvanise and go for it, but it's not seemed to have worked for them at all.
I'm really glad you mentioned Brooke Shield Ferris there, because I did actually screenshot that tweet because I wanted to mention that on this one. So well done, you. But she did actually put a tweet out herself, which obviously said she was absolutely gutted to have suffered a triple leg break and dislocation in today's game. I mean, that is I don't want to think about what sort of challenge you have to be able to break your leg in 3 different places and dislocate it as well. So it's not pleasant. But she does say the biggest thank you for all the love and messages, and then the comeback is on post-surgery, that is in brackets. So
just quickly, sorry, on that as well. It's what's been really positive is Cambridge United main account, Cambridge United Academy, as well as the women's team have put out good luck messages, and I think it was put out on the main Cambridge United account, and it was the women's team retweeted the main account with the statement about what had happened, about the sort of the recovery and sport. So I think there's a sort of that message of one club, one support. It's not the men's team just, oh, here you go, retweet that. No, this is important. It's one of our players who's been badly injured. We're going to support her as she goes through this recovery. That comes off our main account. I think that's a really positive message as well to send certainly, especially in a situation like this.
I agree, entirely agree. Gareth, if you want to have your say on this, I'll be very intrigued to find out who you think might win it. Whether you think it'll be the precociousness of youth that is Fulham, or whether the grisly old Norwich City are going to finally make it into that top position.
I think one thing I will say, just to start with, is I think MK Dons struggling is an example of why teams take reprieves, so they don't kind of end up with 2 relegation fights in the successive sort of in the lower division. My head and heart say 2 different things with the title fight. My head says I think Fulham will probably eke it out. My heart, given that when I was at college, sort of 16, 17, 18, I had a season ticket at Norwich, been to Carrow Road, spent many a Saturday in my youth there. My heart says that I think Norwich will do it, that the mighty Canaries will do it. All I want, though, in sort of reality is just a good old scrap between the 2. I think what we'll probably see is whoever wins the league obviously goes up, and I think probably the second place 2 of those will probably edge the playoff game. So I think I would be not surprised, but I would be a little bit surprised if both of those sides aren't in Tier 3 next season.
No, absolutely.
Which then does beg the question of what, depending on geography, where did Norwich go? Because there is a world where Norwich end up in the north again, like they have done with the FA Cup draws. And
Sudbury, the League Cup Northern section. There we go.
Norwich could end up,
I would love an away day against Norwich, because then I can get all of my friends from school to come on over and have a nice little reunion, and it'll be vindication that I can show all of the people that I'm not from the south.
No, but you definitely are from the Midlands. There's no way you're going to get past that. You've got to, you can't miss out on the southeast, and then no, sure.
It did make me chuckle. There was one year where, depending on which teams were relegated, etc., how it panned out, Ipswich could have been playing in the Northern Premier Division.
Kings Lynn are in the Kings Lynn men's side. They're in the National League North, so they're playing like Blythe and sort of sides up that end. In Carlisle, what the Carlisle aren't in that league, but it's crazy. It very much is just a case of where are all the teams? There's the line of 12.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to say it now because, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but it's Halifax and Loughborough who are in the relegation spots there, and it's Wimbledon and Billericay in the other ones. So I don't think you're going to be any worse off than Loughborough there. So I think you'll probably find yourselves in the southern there. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just trying to keep hold of them because it just feels like if that keeps happening, I'm going to end up in the Midlands, and I don't want to be there. I'm quite happy.
Listen, all I'm going to say is the Norwich and Wolverhampton are on roughly the same line of latitude. So
I'm not having that.
He's moving to the southwest at this point. He doesn't want to be classed as Midlands still, does it?
Same line of latitude. I'm just for a minute there, I was thinking I'm trying to work it out, but longitude is the vertical one, so I'm not having that. They're on the same line of latitude. No way.
It's true, they are. In fact, I'm technically further north. I think Peterborough is technically further north than Wolverhampton, if I remember rightly. Certainly, he's not far off, anyhow. But it does. There is
Barry, there's a screenshot in the group chat for you, just to blow your mind again.
There you go. There is a segue, but just quickly, there is a segue. I know Barry's trying to now sort of just trying to work his geography here. Worthing were obviously, if I remember rightly, a couple of seasons ago in Div 1 South East and are now in Div 1 South West. And I think it does interest me. I wonder how much of an impact that has had on them over, because they were doing really well in Div 1 South East a couple of seasons ago, and now they're struggling in Div 1 South West after a couple of seasons. I do wonder how much that move across has impacted them, because I think if your players are sort of Southeast associated and are then having to travel down to your Bournemouths, your Exeters, etc., and that's taking up more and more of your time, especially if you don't have those big budgets, then that's going to drain on your resources. I think I do wonder how much those sort of splits do have it on the success and failure of teams.
I mean,
Donny Road similar.
What I will say is that if Norwich go up, regardless of where they get put, it will be the South, probably, you imagine. But them away games are going to be awful, wherever they end up being put.
Yeah. Or really good, because actually what the teams will do is make use of them and do real team bonding sessions and sort of go down to the coast, go sort of travel across to the coast on a Saturday and or do stuff in the Broads and make a bit of a exercise of it in sort of session of it, and then go into the games all in a much better position. There you go. That's me just being.
I mean, I've just looked at that picture you sent me. Yes, it might be on the same latitude, but they're on like the extension of England, don't they? If you imagine England just as like a normal rectangle, they're on an extension. That's extra travel. I'm not having it. No, that's on the conservatory. No chance. We're not having that. And that's why Kent is the Garden of England, because that's just behind the conservatory. So there we go. We're not having any more of that. All right. Now, let's talk about Swindon, because Swindon are at the top of the Southwest. And this is, of course, where Barry was born. So we all love Swindon. And look at them. They're unbeaten. 24 points from a possible 24. Smashing it. The mighty Moneyfield, Stu Barker's side, bless them, are on 19 with Bristol Rovers, looking like they are the only teams that could potentially have anything to say about this. If Moneyfield were to win their game in hand, obviously they would only be 2 points behind Swindon, and it is game on and in their own hands, because they would need to face Swindon again. Nick's already unmuted. He's ready to go. He's like a poodle.
Straight
in.
I was just going to say, I presume that the reason why Swindon have won all their games is because all the opposition teams have got lost around the magic roundabout. Just the Moneyfield's game in hand is actually tomorrow evening, 6th of November. It's been switched. They were due to host Bournemouth Sport, or they were due to travel to Bournemouth Sports last week. Game got postponed last week, and it's now this week at Moneyfield. So they've flipped the game. So Moneyfields could, by sort of 24 hours time, be on 22 points, really breathing down Swindon's neck there. So I'm making me eat my words as well, of course, from earlier on this show.
Of course.
But go for it, mate.
We can see Portishead sat there at the bottom of the table. They were obviously mentioned earlier on in the FA Cup game against Billericay. They're not having the best of seasons. Worthing as well, just with them. Keynsham Town, just above the relegation line. Again, it's one of those. It's almost like the league is sort of splitting, but again, anywhere from 5th down. And that seems to be the big picture that's been seen along a lot of the WNL league so far, is that it's really only the top 4 that look like they're going to be troubling the promotion place at all, with the rest of them all genuinely still in with a chance of being dragged into something regarding a relegation battle, which is quite exciting. That's good in a way. I mean, it's terrible for the teams involved. If you're one of those there, like Ascot United, sorry, we're not trying to have a go at you there, but it does at least mean there should be some excitement. Boys, anything you would add on this particular league before we wrap it up with the Manager of the Month conversation?
I just think, as you said, it's the splits. I think clubs know roughly what their aims and aspirations are, and where they will look to, what they're realistically who should be finishing where. When these things, when they start, they know. You look at last season, Swindon and Moneyfields were top. Were in that sort of top few teams. So therefore, everyone knew they'll be pushing for it, and that's what their aspirations are as well. So I think it's how much teams and clubs will sort of look at it and go, we ain't going to get up this season because we've got too far to catch up those teams, and therefore let's just try and build and secure safety and watch those two teams battle it out and do it. Because as long as we finish above the bottom two, we're fine, we're safe. I think Bridgewater United is a good one. Is an interesting case though in point on this one, because they were, if I remember rightly, this division they struggled last season. I'm now trying to remember all those teams from last season. They finished 7th last season on 27 points. They've already nearly, they're 10 points off that total with played a third, less than half the games, so a third of the games. So they're well on course to do better than that last season. And I think but otherwise you look at that's the top. Well, that's second, third, and fourth for your top three teams this time around. Worthing, we talked about them briefly, obviously at the beginning. Just they've slipped down. Portishead, again, another team that was saved. They had a reprieve last season as well, and again, they're struggling. You do wonder how much is that. I suppose the one surprise for me is Keynsham. They finished last season comfortably mid-table on 32 points, and they're now sitting there on 6 points with a third of the games played. Is that them? What's happened there, I suppose, is the question. I don't know the Southwest well enough. Stu will probably know more about it than me. That's the one that stands out for me in a way.
But again, Portishead are a side that were given the reprieve in this division, and there they are sitting at the bottom. But again, Bournemouth Sports not doing too bad at all, and they were only just above them. So I don't know. It's a very, very, very tricky situation, I think, all told there. But it's going to be an incredibly exciting division, that's for sure. Right, well, we're going to finish it off with the I was going to say player of the month there, but it's not, for the tier 4 manager of the month. Now, obviously, they've got 4 divisions. I can confirm that nobody in the Southwest is up for that. So if you're watching this on the Southwest and you're thinking, woo, don't get too excited, it's game over for you. It's the other 3 divisions that you would be voting for here. Now, we have got Andy Cook from Norwich City. We were just talking about them. They're second in the Southeast. They played 2 games this month in the league. They had a 5-0 win against MK Dons, which we saw a 10th, and a 5-2 away win against Sudbury, who are also in the relegation zone. So that is the manager of the month there. We've got Matt Jones.
Don't forget Cups games included. So beating the mighty Stevenage did count.
I don't think you can include cup games. I'm not saying that include any of the others. It's manager of the month for the division, surely, not for others.
Cup games included. Cup games are now included.
Absolutely ridiculous. What sort of Mickey Mouse competition is this? It's manager of the month for the WNL. Why are you including the FA Cup? I'm not having. That's even worse than Norwich being on the same line as Wolves.
It's only the FA Cup that counts. County Cups don't count.
Yeah.
So it's WNL. WNL Cup, FA
I want
Cup.
justice for the county cups. Nobody cares about the county cup. I can't include goals on full time for the county cups. Honestly, people need to put a bit more respect on the county cups. Anyway, yes, they did beat Stevenage 4-3, but we definitely went into that quite a lot last week. Matt Jones for Worcester City. I'm not going to tell you the FA Cup one because I didn't write it down, but they've only played 2 games. They had a 1-0 away win. A home win, against Kidderminster, and a 4-0 away win with Notts County. We then got James Mulvihill from Wythenshawe. They've played 2 games. I'm sure there's an FA Cup game in there somewhere, but you won't care about it because they lost 2-1 against Cheadle, which was definitely the big one. I'm just saying, mate, that's what happened. He did it to me.
We still won an FA Cup game. We beat Polton Vic 7-0, and equalled our longest ever run in the FA Cup by making the first round proper. So yes, although we lost in the first round, we did win the third qualifying round 7-0 in October and reached the first round, which equalled our best ever run in the competition.
Good job, guys.
That's how I sold it to the league anyway.
You sold it. Good job there. So again, 1-0 again.
Politician, elective. Vote Gareth. Vote Gareth for manager. No. Vote James for manager of the month.
They also had the away win against York 4-2. And the last one, of course, is Jake Paul from Peterborough United. They are top of their division. They only played one game. There is 2 FA Cup games, though, so I'm sure they count as well. But the win they had, there was a 7-3 away win thriller against Northampton. So if you're looking just for entertainment, the fact that you managed to get a 10-goal game is always quite a good one. Also interesting that Worcester got chosen with them being 7th in the league. So it's quite nice to see that they are looking around at the results and not just picking the teams that are at the top all the time. But Gareth, we'll let you kick off on this one, as soon as we let Nick kick off on the one that included the Wolves one. So without being biased, where would you go? And then you can do your biased bit, but give a little bit of kudos where you can.
Yeah. Genuinely, the answer is the same. And the reason the answer is the same is because although Norwich and Peterborough, I think if you look on paper, have had probably stronger months results-wise, they are exactly where they're expected to be. You expected Norwich to be there or thereabouts this season. You expected Peterborough to be there or thereabouts this season. Both sides are there or thereabouts. So those managers have merely done what has been expected of them. Yes, it's that the results are strong, but they've done what has been expected of them. What James has done at Wythenshawe is, a side that probably outside of the Northwest, no one had really heard of 6 months ago. Even within the Northwest, 2.5 years ago, they were a point away from being relegated into the county leagues. So that kind of movement through the leagues has been fantastic. And I think everyone in August thought, if Wythenshawe stay up comfortably, then that's been a really strong season for them. So to be where we are, to beat York, who I think, if you were looking at it in July when the fixtures came out, people would go, that's a relegation 6-pointer. To win that game, to equal the strong FA Cup run, although we did lose to Huddersfield in the first round, which was disappointing. But then, at this point, Cheadle had played 6-1-6. They were beating anybody that came up against them, with the exception of some of the WNL Cup games. And then we beat them. We went 1-0 down, fought back 2-1, 87th minute winner in the pouring rain. What's not to love? And now I know it's November, so Doncaster win doesn't actually count, but to be in a position now where we're level on points with them because of that win, Cheadle could have been 8 points clear at that point. And at that point, you're thinking, the league, there's one hand on it. They just need to do, they can afford a couple of slip-ups and they'll be there or thereabouts. But I think as a result of that performance, and then obviously surely getting a result against Cheadle now, that's blown the title race wide open. It is now 6 teams that could realistically think we're going to have a push at this. Whereas if we'd lost that game, then I think everyone then starts to scrap for second place. I just think it's a fantastic month. Disappointing FA Cup result, but won both the league games, won in the third qualifying round. I just think, that's both my biased and my unbiased opinion. If you wanted me to pick someone that wasn't James, it would probably be Peterborough, purely because they're flying in the league. But like I mentioned, people expected them maybe not to be a 100% win rate at this point, but to be where they are, people expected that. And their big result came this weekend, which is November. So.
No, that's very good. Do you know what? To be fair, I mean, I have just you both managed to convince me. I have just voted for both Macca and of course Withenshaw there. So congratulations, you got yourself another vote. And I would agree with you there on Withenshaw that nobody was expecting them to be there, and to beat Cheadle 2-1 was an absolutely outstanding result to do that. But if I wasn't going to go for them, I probably would have gone for the Worcester nomination. I think there, just because 2 wins. Not counting the cup game, obviously, and scoring 5 goals and conceding none. That's quite a good little run for them for Worcester. So that's where I would have gone. Nick, where would you have gone?
I'm torn. I think there's positives for everyone. Just quickly, just running through the manager. I think there's an argument that actually Andy Cook shouldn't even be in the Norwich, to be precise, shouldn't be in the Southeast. They messed it up last season. They should have been promoted last season. So therefore, they are very much they're doing what they should have done, last season, or they're on course for that. So I think that's the reason not to vote Andy. I got a lot of time for Andy. Don't get me wrong on that. I think. Withenshaw, I think it's not just about the results this month. It's about how, as a team, they've reacted. September was a tough month for them. They've conceded in 2 games, 13 goals, and taken a good couple of spankings in that period. And one you can put down to you can put aside one of those losses and park it, but to have 2 in quite quick succession is tough. So I think to turn that round mentally, and then to do it again. To win the derby after losing to Huddersfield as well shows good leadership and management by James there at Withenshaw. So I think that's real positive there. Worcester smashing out the park. They obviously pushed Halifax in the League Cup really well. League Cup or FA? It was the League Cup in there as well. And they're an independent team doing well, pushing outside the boundaries. They won their derby against Kiddie, which is huge. Obviously, they beat Notts County, who are doing really well this season as well in that division. So I think real positives there for them. And over at Peterborough United, I think for me, their victory in the FA Cup over Real Bedford is huge. We've seen how well Real Bedford are doing in the league. For Posh to beat Real Bedford in the FA Cup and not just scrape a 1-0 win, it was a convincing win. There was it was 4-1 hat trick as well. That is some achievement, and we talk about lack of cup sets in the FA Cup, and that was definitely a cup set. Posh were pushing it as well. They had to get as many fans down there as well, down to Pims Park. So I think it also helped sort of galvanise and build the fan base there as well. So for me, to be honest, I don't mind. I'll vote Withenshaw because to get the Withenshaw vote for Macca. But to be honest, I think pretty much all the managers have got a good chance there and deserve it.
You know what this is like watching, didn't you?
Question time.
Like a really bad Eurovision Song Contest. Everybody just giving each other douze pois. Meanwhile, poor old Norwich is sitting there, nil pois. Bless them. Poor old Norwich on the extension.
Withenshaw do really good food as well, to be honest. Therefore, that's another good reason to vote for Withenshaw. There's positive reasons to vote for them, so therefore they should get manager of the month just for that alone. There you go.
Pair of you next time we coming on and singing. That's how this is working. We'll have a proper vote. Gareth will do his very best Freddie Mercury. What was that?
I'm not sure anyone.
So
I want to break free.
Can't wait. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to break free right now, and we are going to bring this to a close. It's been a brilliant 90 minutes. That's almost been an entire game, but superb stuff. We've managed to get through the WNL. Please make sure you go and follow these guys. Nick is always doing the Wolves Win Pod as well, so do make sure you search that up on Twitter and find that in all good places where you can get your podcast. Gareth is always here as well every week. We're very much looking forward to being back next week. I'm not sure yet whether we're going to look back over the WNL Cup or whether we'll go back into Tier 5, but whatever happens, we will be here. So thank you very much for joining us, and from Nick, myself and Freddie, we'll see you next week.